Spiders are not out to get you. They don't even know you exist. If they could understand what a human being was and what we are capable of doing, they would avoid us like the plague.
Rod Crawford is the curator of the arachnids and related research collections at Seattle's Burke Museum of Natural History and Culture, where he works with around 200,000 specimens from around the world, focusing on those from Washington state. Rod has been working with the museum, collecting and studying spiders since the 1970s, and even made an appearance on Bill Nye the Science Guy in 1996. His website, called Spider Myths, is a long-term and exhaustive project with the goal of debunking the many, many misconceptions about spiders. And I was lucky enough to join Rod in his lab at the Burke Museum to discuss some of these urban legends and bogus facts. I was pretty shocked at some of the myths that I believed wholeheartedly, and I bet you will be too. And maybe, like me, you'll walk away being just a little bit less afraid of these vital little creatures. I'm your host, Chelsey Weber-Smith, and this is American Hysteria. I'm here with Rod Crawford, and I'm so excited to talk to you. So thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
And we are going to be discussing all kinds of spider myths, of which there are way more than I ever expected. And I have to admit that I've been duped quite a bit about spiders. So I would love to just start with getting to know you a bit. What was it that inspired you to start debunking spider myths?
Well, after I had been working with spiders here for 15 or 20 years or so, I got to be sufficiently well known as a point person on spiders that I started getting lots of public inquiries. And gradually it dawned on me that the public inquirers, the vast, vast majority, believed certain things about spiders, which were all wrong.
Well, I mean, I have to include myself in those because, as I mentioned, I have a pretty big fear of spiders, but I also have a very deep respect for them, right? Which is a big difference. I think if you're afraid of something, you also have to learn enough about it to at least not act on your fear. I don't kill a spider. I let him be. I just say, please don't come too close to me, and I won't come too close to you. So
anyway, it wasn't too long after that time that I realized that there was a market for spider myth debunking, that the museum came into the modern internet world. So I taught myself HTML and wrote all the code for the original version of Spider Myths personally.
Wow.
And after it went live on the Burke Museum site, it became, for a while, the most visited pages on the entire site.
Wow.
And it's still one of the most visited.
And you've been around the Burke Museum since the 70s. So when did you start your debunking website?
That was like around 1988, 89,
Wow.
90, somewhere like that.
So those were really early days of the internet. Okay. So that was probably a pretty popular website in general because there weren't that many websites to go to. I'm sure there weren't that many spider myth websites, if there were any at all.
No, I mean, there are a few other things on the internet now debunking individual spider myths, but I think mine is still the most comprehensive.
Yeah, it's a bit of a compendium, I would say. Yeah. Well, would you like to get into some of these myths with me?
Sure. Well, I mean, there are approximately 85 or 90 separate phony stories that are debunked on my site, but some of them were just started by stupid news stories that went viral.
Yes. We will definitely get into those because there are quite a few.
But one of the oldest and still one of the most widespread and definitely the most dangerous to human health is the idea that if you didn't see what bit you, it was a spider.
I definitely have thought I've had spider bites before because someone told me that looks like a spider bite.
You sit having a conversation with 5 or 6 other people and the question of spider bites come up. Somebody is certain to say, "Oh yeah, I got spider bites all the time. Man, they crawl into my bed at night and bite me. I don't know what to do about it." And if I were there, I'd ask, "Well, excuse me, sir, did you ever, even once in your life, actually see a spider standing on your skin biting you?"
Yeah.
"Well, no, they only do it when you're asleep."
And tell me about that myth, because that was one that really surprised me about I've always thought, well, a spider might crawl in my bed and bite me. I've thought that a spider had crawled in my bed and bit me before for exactly the reasons you're talking about, just because people say it all the time. So tell me about that myth about spiders going in your bed.
Well, I mean, it's not impossible for a spider to crawl into a bed by accident. There's no way a spider would crawl into your bed for any conceivably functional bit of spider business.
Yeah.
Unless you have bed bugs or something.
Yeah, then you got a bigger problem.
But if a spider crawls into your bed, if the spider's lucky, it will crawl out again without ever encountering you.
Yeah.
If you roll over on a spider, the spider might defensively bite what is underneath the spider. In other words, the sheet. The spider's fangs are on the underside.
Right.
If you're on top of a spider, it's not even possible for you to be bitten.
So what do you say when someone says, "Oh, I have this bump that doesn't really look like a mosquito bite. I think it's got to be a spider bite." Does that happen? Or do spider bites look like that? Tell me a little bit more about that type of experience that people might have. Well,
people have heard that spiders have 2 fangs. So if they find 2 punctures, even if they're like an inch apart, they think, oh, that proves it's a spider bite.
A huge spider bite.
However, the real fangs of real spiders, even a spider as big as a tarantula, are so sharp and slender that the puncture they make isn't really easily visible to the naked eye. So if you have visible skin punctures, that in itself is pretty good proof that it's not caused by a spider.
Okay. So say, we're in Washington State, but the rest of the country too. If you were to get bit by a spider, what does that look like?
Well, it doesn't look like anything.
Okay.
You might feel a little itch or a temporary pain. If you're having some kind of a little delayed hypersensitivity, it might swell a bit or become red for a little while, but there might not be any such response at all.
Right. So maybe that leads into this idea that there are deadly spiders in the United States, or really the world in general. So what do you say to someone who is afraid of, a spider bite that could kill them?
Well, even drinking excessive amounts of water could kill you.
Sure.
But a spider bite is one of the least likely ways of getting killed. It's somewhere below the chance of being struck by lightning, and maybe a little above the chance of being struck by a meteor.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
I mean, even a totally harmless spider bite is an extremely rare event.
Yeah.
A typical person might get 1 or 2 in a lifetime at the most. When I get calls like, "Oh, I've had 35 or 40 spider bites in the last year, what can I do?" That's absolute, for sure, proof that what is bothering them is not spiders, because spiders simply don't do that.
Yeah. More likely to win the lottery a few times.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, consider me. I'm an unusual person in that I deliberately handle live spiders. I have deliberately handled like tens of thousands of different live spiders with my bare hands over a period of over 50 years.
Yeah.
And received 3 actual bites.
Wow. Okay.
Over all that time doing all that spider handling.
Yeah.
So I am more than a little skeptical of all the people who tell me, oh, they crawl into my bed and bite me every night.
Right, right. What do you think might be some of the things that are mistaken for spider bites?
Well, I have a link to Rick Vitter's website where he lists about 50 different things that have been misdiagnosed as brown recluse bites.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everything from the punctures of plant thorns to bacterial and fungal infections, to athlete's foot, you name it. Anything that can make a little bump or a little lesion or a little rash on your skin, it gets blamed on a spider.
Right. More after this. And now, back to the show. So I think that one of the myths that you debunked that's related to what we're talking about is about the amount of brown recluse spider bites that people claim to have had. And you say that brown recluse spider bites are pretty bogus around here, especially maybe everywhere in the country. But I know 2 people who are very close to me that were told, right, by doctors that they had brown recluse bites. But you do take issue with that diagnosis. And it does seem like maybe there's an issue with that in the medical world.
Yeah, I mean, some doctors do have the appropriate knowledge, but they didn't get it in medical school. You don't even get 1 hour on spiders in a typical medical school curriculum. That species, Loxosceles reclusa, lives in 15 states centered around Missouri. We are here in Washington State, and the nearest known population of brown recluse is in Nebraska.
It's pretty far.
I have seen 2 specimens a brown recluse that got accidentally imported to our state. Only 2 in my entire 50-some-year career.
Wow.
Both of those specimens are now dead. Neither one bit anyone when it was alive.
Yeah.
So of the 100 or more, quote, brown recluse bites that get reported or diagnosed in this state every year, I am quite confident that 100% are phony.
Just like the other ones where there's some other issue going on.
This even happens in Alaska. I mean, give me a break. A semi-tropical species in Alaska?
If you were to be bit, say in Nebraska, how dangerous is a brown recluse bite? Is it as dangerous as people seem to think?
No. Probably more than 50% don't even have any clinical effect. The most severe thing you can typically expect would be a open skin sore that heals in about a month. Cases of reported deaths are almost all cases where nobody actually saw any spider.
Right. So is it true that the venom of a brown recluse or any other spiders actually causes necrosis, like causes the skin tissue around the bite to die?
I believe the effect now. Don't hold me to this because I am not a medical expert.
Okay.
But I believe the effect is at least partially due to damage to the tiny capillaries that feed blood to the tissues. And therefore, the tissue is cut off from our blood supply and dies and has to be regrown in the healing process.
So here's one that I think pretty much everybody has heard before. This is another myth that you cover about the daddy long legs. And the myth is that it has the world's most powerful venom, but its fangs are so small that it can't bite you. So you say, not true.
Very not true. To begin with, daddy long legs doesn't mean anything to a biologist because there are radically different kinds of creatures that are called that by different people.
Right.
If you're in England, which is where our language originated, as you know. No arachnid is called that. That term is used for crane flies, which have no biting mouth parts of any kind and don't consume any solid food as adults.
Yeah, they don't eat mosquitoes, which is an aside myth, not related to spiders. Yeah,
that's an insect myth.
Yes.
I do spider myths.
Oh, well, we'll keep it to spiders.
And then among the arachnids, there's a long-legged true spider that is commonly found making cobby webs under ceilings in basements and bathrooms. You've probably seen those. Mm-hmm. That's called Pholcus phalangoides. And as far as we know, it has an unusually weak venom because it's been observed to have a great deal of trouble actually subduing insect prey by its venom alone. It has to wrap it in silk.
Okay. And
then in our local area, the term is probably used mostly for a group of arachnids called harvestmen. They're a group that have a round, consolidated body, not divided into two separate sections like spider bodies. Mm-hmm. They live mostly outdoors, and not only are their fangs small, they're non-existent.
Oh.
They have only chewing jaws, no fangs, no venom glands, no silk glands. They're not spiders.
They're not spiders. Wow. Huh. That's a big myth then, because I definitely thought that those were spiders.
Yes, I have heard elementary school teachers telling that to their classes.
Oh, we need you. We need you, Rod. Okay. All right. So no fangs, no venom in these ones.
Mm-hmm. Depending on which quote, daddy long legs you're thinking of.
Right. Wow. Okay. Well, how about then another spider myth is that this idea that I think we've probably all heard, and many of us believe, that black widow spiders eat their mates. But there's a little caveat to that information.
Yeah, like there are 30 plus different species of black widows in addition to brown widows and red widows and so forth. Their mating behavior is a little different in each one.
Right.
In Washington, California, and other western states, we have one black widow species, the western black widow, in which females have been seen to kill and eat the mate after mating in cages.
In captivity.
But it is in captivity where the male could not get away.
Wow, okay.
But in that species, mate cannibalism has never once been observed in the wild.
Wow. And I hear that one all the time, right? I mean, they use that in pop culture to talk about a woman who...
Not only in pop culture, it's used as an example of conserving energy for the species in college ecology courses.
Wow. Oh, no.
Or at least it was one in my student days.
Wow. Okay, so these myths go all the way to the top, it sounds like.
But there are a few widow species in which mate consumption is apparently more common, although we don't really have any statistical study on it.
Okay.
The Australian redback apparently does it fairly commonly.
Is that a widow?
Yeah.
It is. Okay.
It's a very close relative of the American black widows, and its venom is quite similar to that of our black widows. It's not 10 times as deadly as every other spider, which is what all Australians believe.
There you go, an Australian spider myth. So I think black widows cause even more kind of anxiety in people, at least in Washington state, than the brown recluse.
Well, we really do have black widows in eastern Washington.
We do, yes. I've actually never seen one in person either, but I know they're out there, and people are very scared of them. What is it like when you get bit by a black widow in reality?
You may not feel anything at the time of the bite, or you might feel a little pain. There's usually no major effects to the skin or the part of your body that's bitten. The first major effect is severe abdominal cramps, and then you become sick as a dog for a few days. There are very good medical treatments, so if you get treated, the chance of death is essentially zero.
Right. So here's one that you wanted to make sure I included, and I think it's really interesting, is this idea that spiders have to come in the house to get out of the cold when the seasons start to change in August and September. So tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, well, here in Pacific Northwest cities, we have a species called the giant house spider. It's gone under various different scientific names. I prefer to call it Tegenaria gigantea, but I'm in a minority.
Sure.
The adult males have a very big leg span. They can completely cover the palm of my hand, and frequently do.
Wow. Oh.
Because they make really outstanding hands-on demonstrators for classroom demonstrations because they're so docile.
Wow. Docile, huh?
In practically all spiders, when the male of the species becomes sexually mature, he stops doing whatever it was he's been doing and starts wandering around looking for mates.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if this concept seems sexist, but it's in spiders, it's almost universally the males who seek mates and the females who wait to be found.
All right. That's okay. Yeah. And so that's what they're doing when they come inside.
And we're also talking about a species that is able to run faster than almost any other known spider.
Wow.
So whenever the local house population becomes sexually mature, people start seeing these very large, brown, fast-moving brown spiders running around in their house. And that's where the myth comes in. I've never seen these spiders in my house until now. They must have come in from outside. But actually, if you went outside and started looking in your lawn and your garden or in the woodlands or any other nearby habitats, you could never find even one of that species because it's a house spider. It's been adapting to life in buildings for as long as buildings have existed. In our part of the world, where it's not even native, it's European in origin, of course, it's not known to have any viable populations other than the ones that are in or under or on man-made structures. It couldn't possibly have come in from outside because there aren't any outside.
Okay. So that must mean that it's true when you hear if you catch a spider in your house, you shouldn't put it outside. Is that true?
Right. I mean, if you must put it someplace, try putting it in the crawl space, the garage, the carport, some sheltered man-made habitat, then it has a chance.
Got it.
Throw it out in the yard, it has no chance to survive.
Yeah. And I don't want that. I want them to survive. So I'm going to keep that in mind, definitely. Okay, so going back to this idea that the spiders come inside during the summer, you talked about the pesticide industry or people
there are a lot of different pest control companies, and many of them are honest and knowledgeable and will try to talk people out of their crazy ideas, but unfortunately, there are also a lot, including several of the big national companies, that routinely just buy into the myths that make them money.
Right.
And they have what they call an anti-spider perimeter treatment. If someone thinks spiders are coming into their house from outdoors, these companies will sell you a pesticide spray all around the outside of your building to keep the spiders from doing that. And since the spiders aren't doing it in the first place, it works great.
Yeah, and everybody thinks it's working, probably.
Yeah, particularly since the mating season starts to wind down in a couple of weeks. So things are pre-programmed to make people think that it's working.
A little bit of a conspiracy.
So that adds a lot of unnecessary poisonous pesticide, and I'm talking about real poison here, not imaginary spider venom,
right,
to the environment, in addition to taking a lot of money out of your pocket and into the company's pocket.
Right. I noticed that a lot of the research I was trying to do, aside, you would come up all the time when I was trying to research information about spiders, but so did a lot of websites for pest control companies. And I started to wonder, are these things I'm reading accurate? Because they have an interest, don't they, in making you feel like the spiders are coming to get you.
Yes, I'm not naming any names here because I don't want to get sued, but there are certain companies for which the spider information on their websites would best be described by a term I'm not impolite enough to use.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. Maybe we could get into some of these spider panics that kind of sweep different nations at different times. I know one that I'm particularly interested in is the false widows in Britain, because even a few years ago, I remember in the news, everybody was kind of freaking out, saying that there was these false widow spiders causing, all this mayhem in England. But you seem to think that is a bit of a hysteria.
I mean, that species has been in southern England since the 19th century, although it's native to some place in the Mediterranean area. Like any other spider, it very, very rarely bites a human. But like any other situation where someone develops something they think is a spider bite, it's easy to blame the spider, even though you never actually saw one. Mm-hmm. And in the British Isles, the news media go in a lot for tabloids. And no matter what they're talking about, whether it's spiders or flying saucers, tabloids go in for saying whatever will scare people enough to click on them.
Yes. That's something we found quite a bit in all the different things we do on our show as well, is that it's so much driven by the media wanting to get your attention, wanting to freak you out.
So even today, every few weeks, there's one of these stories in British media.
Yeah.
And if you try to trace it down, you find that someone developed some alarming symptoms and without ever actually having seen a spider, somehow became a false widow victim.
And I mean, it's already out there. So people have this easy thing though they think I have these mysterious symptoms, I've been hearing all this scary stuff, and it's kind of easy to be duped into thinking, well, that probably is happening to me if it's happening to all these other people.
They get situations where a school finds a few false widows in their basement. So they close down the whole bloomin' school.
Wow.
People move out of their houses because they either have or think they have false widows.
It's powerful. It's a powerful fear, I think, that we have of spiders.
Kids are brought up to become phobics. Mm-hmm. Their entire life is poisoned by this.
Yeah, I was definitely raised in a very spider-phobic household. And I think I'm not really scared of, I'm not scared of snakes, not scared of rats, not scared of kind of the other things that people are often scared of. I think I grew up with my mom seeing a spider across the room and screaming. And then, what else was I going to think, right? I guess I was bound to grow up being scared of them. Do you find a lot of arachnophobia?
Well, spider fears are very widespread. Probably the majority of the population in our culture has some degree of it. Mm-hmm. True phobia is a much more minority phenomenon.
Yeah.
A phobic is someone for whom the fear of something is so debilitating that they can barely even function if they're afraid that the feared object is somewhere nearby.
Right.
Well, that's a lot more unusual than a simple fear.
So you do think the majority of people in America have some degree of spider fear, even if they're not spider phobic?
That's what a survey sponsored by the Entomological Society of America found a few years ago.
More after this. And now, back to the show. So can you tell me about this other spider, the Joro spider, that's caused panics that are kind of similar to the false widow?
Well, I don't know how much panic there has been, but if there hasn't been, it's not the fault of the news media.
Okay.
Just in the last, couple of months or so, I think somebody probably started it out by putting out a press release on how this very large tropical orb weaver, which was introduced a few years back in Georgia, has been spreading to other parts of the East Coast. It's gotten as far as Maryland now. Mm-hmm. And This is a very large spider. I mean, in its web, it can cover as much area as our giant house spider.
Okay.
And it's not crawling around on the ground. It's right up in the air.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Might even be in your face.
I hope not.
So some tabloid got hold of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing they did was, and it's venomous in all caps.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I've got news for you guys. Saying a spider is venomous is not news. 99.5% of all spiders have venom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not news to say a spider is venomous. The news would be if it wasn't.
Ah, yes.
But the venom of a Joro spider is, as far as we know, utterly and completely harmless to humans.
Mm-hmm.
So the only possible reason for trumpeting in all caps that it's venomous
Mm-hmm.
is to scare people into clicking on you.
Yes. Yes. And I bet it works pretty well, unfortunately.
And secondly, because the baby Joro spiders,
Mm-hmm.
which are like the size of a pinhead, are able to disperse themselves by wind in a process called a ballooning,
Mm-hmm.
and the adults are very large, they say in big scare headline type, giant flying spiders
Mm-hmm.
are coming for us.
I've seen that one.
But, and of course, that's implying something that's not true at all,
Mm-hmm.
because the giant adults can't disperse by air.
Mm-hmm.
The wind needs to be able to waft you up off the ground. And if you're this big, it can't do that.
That makes sense.
In actuality, although it is an invasive species, but no one has discovered any downside to its presence in the USA so far.
That's good. How about, this is an urban legend that we didn't end up covering. We covered some urban legends in the episode that we just did. But what about this one about people finding spider eggs inside their bananas?
Yeah, I don't know how that one started, but as far as any research I was able to do showing it up, it doesn't seem to be very old, maybe 20 years or less.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's been publicized by various people in various ways. So a lot of people have heard of it, that there can be spider eggs near the stem attachment of the banana.
Like inside, right? Inside the peel.
Yeah, inside the skin. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And supposedly this originates because the spider laid its eggs inside the banana flower.
Mm-hmm.
But what they didn't know was that commercial bananas are almost entirely grown without pollination of the flower from the ovary portion of the flower, which is completely sealed and enclosed, even in the original flower.
Mm-hmm.
So there's absolutely no possible way for eggs to get inside the fruit, even if the spider would somehow benefit from doing that, which they wouldn't, because if your eggs are inside a completely enclosed fruit and nobody eats it, how are your baby spiders ever going to get out?
Very good point.
Plus, even if there were eggs inside the banana, if you ate it, nothing would happen to you.
Mm-hmm. So I've even heard with that one that that's the reason that monkeys open the banana from the bottom. Have you heard
Yeah,
this?
that's part of the original story.
Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody just made this up originally to fake people out, and then it just went viral.
Yeah. And that's how a lot of urban legends are started, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely how the toilet seat story started.
What's that one?
Well, there was a viral news story. Somebody made up this story just to see how widely it would spread.
Really?
They made up a completely fake story that a fake restaurant in a fake airport had found a fake spider species, that is a name of spider species that never really existed, that had been imported from some other part of the world to the airport, that made its web under toilet seats and bit people in the
I got
and
it.
was deadly dangerous.
Wow.
And every single detail in the story was deliberately fake, and it became viral.
I guess that person knew what they were doing then. Well, I think probably we're all happy to know that one's not true. So what do you think is the harm in these myths? What are the bad things that can happen when we believe some of the untrue things that we've talked about today when it comes to spiders?
If you blame a potentially life-threatening medical condition on a spider that never actually existed and get treated for that instead of for what you have, it could kill you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you are afraid of spiders in your house and yard, think they're doing things that they couldn't possibly do, and get pesticide treatments for them, you are poisoning the environment and yourself.
Yeah.
And wasting your money.
Yeah.
That's harm.
That is harm. Absolutely. What advice do you have for someone like me, or probably a lot of our listeners that have a fear of spiders? Have you found, since you've worked with so many different kinds of people around spiders, have you found anything that helps that fear?
Well, if you have a simple non-phobia type fear, just learning more about them really seems to help.
Yeah.
People who are phobic, whose life is actually made measurably more difficult by this phobia because they can barely function if they think there's a spider around.
Yeah.
They should be treated because it's a mental illness, and it's one of the most treatable of all different kinds of mental illnesses. And the standard treatment is exposure therapy. It's possible to do it using very small live spiders that's too small to trigger the fear, and getting used to those and then moving on to slightly bigger spiders and so on. But these days, some therapists are using virtual reality and not actually involving any live spiders.
That's probably a favor to the spiders. I'm glad. Yeah. So is there anything you'd like to say kind of to close us out here? What is it about spiders that you think is the most important thing for people to know?
Well, the most important thing probably is that spiders are absolutely essential to the proper functioning of all land ecosystems. In the temperate zones of the world, they are the major predators on insects. Without them, tens of thousands of insect species would go into a food-limited boom and bust cycle like a plague of locusts. Human civilization would probably be impossible.
Yeah, that's pretty important.
It's also pretty important to know that spiders are not out to get you. They don't even know you exist. They do not suck blood. They do not lay eggs under your skin. If they could understand what a human being was and what we are capable of doing, they would avoid us like the plague.
Definitely.
Unfortunately for them, they're not all that smart, so they sometimes don't hurry to get out of the way when we're coming.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and for teaching me so much about spiders. This has been, I think maybe I'm a little bit less scared of them now. This was American Hysteria. You can find the link to Rod Crawford's website, Spider Myths, in our episode notes. There is so much more to learn. If you want to support our show and get more of it, you can head to patreon.com/American Hysteria or subscribe on Apple Plus. You'll get ad-free episodes as well as bonus content like my other podcast, Hysteria Home Companion, that I do with our producer Miranda, where we tell you stories that were left out of the episodes or stories that we know that you'll love. That's patreon.com/American Hysteria or subscribe on Apple Plus. Another amazing way to support our show, and it's really easy, is to leave us a 5-star review on the app of your choosing. It really helps us out. You can follow us on social media at American Hysteria Podcast. You can find our merch or leave us a message on the Urban Legends hotline at AmericanHysteria.com. Our producer and editor is Miranda Zickler, and our associate producer is Riley Swedelius Smith. And I'm your host, Chelsey Weber Smith. Thanks, as always, for listening, and I hope you have a great week.